The Voice of Stockton. For more information on The Voice of Stockton, go to thevoiceofstockton.org.
This is KBCC 89.5 FM, Tracy, California, Peace and Justice Network of San Joaquin.
The views and opinions expressed in the following program do not necessarily reflect those of KXVS The Voice of Stockton or its parents, affiliates, management, and staff.
Another amazing episode of the Phone Booth here on TVOSJ, the voice of San Joaquin. My name is Ed Heitman, and joining me in the studio as always is my good friend and co-host Brian Rodriguez. How you doing today, man?
Pretty good. How about you?
Doing pretty good. Swell weekend so far. Now, for those of you who might be new to the show, the Phone Booth is a show completely dedicated to the world of pop culture. Anything from movies to video games to TV shows, you name it, and we do our very best to cover it. Now, before we get into the show, I kind of just want to point out, if you haven't seen it already, we have a logo change. Yeah.
Good logo.
I'd like to thank MF Comedy Productions and Marcellus Flores. He recently helped us out in getting a brand new logo came up. You know, we're getting close to a year episode. Next week is our first anniversary.
Yeah.
You know, and our show kind of needed a fresh new coat of paint, in my opinion. So anyways, let's get into the topic here. One of the things that we're talking about is the Call of Duty franchise. It's been a while since I've actually heard people talk about the Call of Duty franchise, I'll be honest. There was the whole Black Ops 4 thing, but it kind of faded off, huh?
Yeah, most of the time I hear it talked about now is more of in relationship to how ridiculous Activision is with the monetization and the fact that it was a failure despite making $500 million in its first 4 days.
Yeah, it's a little weird. But anyways, Activision has announced that the next Call of Duty will be Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Not to be confused with Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare or its two sequels. This game will be a reimagining of the original Modern Warfare using some of the same characters, but in a brand new plot. It will not have a zombies mode, but will have cross-play across PC, Xbox, and PS4 at launch, which is a first.
Yeah, I believe it's the first AAA major publisher game to have crossplay at launch. We actually just had the Epic published Dauntless launch, which is very fun, but I believe it was the first game to have full crossplay at launch. I believe it was the first one. But I'm so glad this trend is finally catching on. I'm glad that Sony, because really, it's Sony been the one stonewalling. Sony has finally, said, fine, we can't seem to beat this, or, I'm just happy. What I'm not happy with is how stupid this title is. This is a stupid title. This is a stupid title made by idiots.
Yeah, if you're new to the Phone Booth, then we've always had issues with movies or video games that come out that decide to use the exact same title as a previous installment, because all it's going to do is confuse people in the end. Mm-hmm.
Hey Ed, you want to come over and play Doom or Prey or Modern Warfare? Which ones?
Yeah, which ones do I choose?
Names have to mean something. I mean, at one point, Modern Warfare was so popular, the original Modern Warfare, because we have to specify that now, that apparently Activision actually wanted to spin it off as its own series. There was going to be the Call of Duty series and the Modern Warfare series, but they got stared off because they were worried the naming would be too confusing. I don't really care about a lack of zombies. They have said that they are going for a much more realistic plot where it's going to be a bit more morally gray. You're going to have... I believe you're going to have the U.S. Armed forces against a group of guerrilla fighters in their home country, and it's going to sort of portray both sides as equally flawed. I believe they've also said Captain Price from the original Modern Warfare is going to return, and he's sort of a fan-favorite character, so that's nice. Don't know if he's going to be voiced by the same guy.
Yeah, I mean... I enjoy the Modern Warfare games.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when it comes to Call of Duty games, I kind of grew up around the time where I was in high school, and Modern Warfare 2 was the very popular game in the installment. The Rust map was where everything went down. That was a nuke town back in the day. You know, so yeah, I mean, I am kind of glad that they are jumping back into the Modern Warfare franchise. It's just I kind of hope they do it right, because I do admit the franchise has been getting a little bit stale lately when it comes to installments.
Yeah, they've also confirmed there will be no season pass for the game, which has been actually a trend with the past few Call of Duties, where they're trying to not split the player base too much, which I like. No word on a Battle Royale mode, though. With how popular Blackout was for a while, I wouldn't be surprised.
I wouldn't really be surprised either. I wouldn't be surprised if they tried like incorporating maps that were popular around the multiplayer time back around Modern Warfare when it first came out. You know, try and throw in some maps that will be used in the Battle Royale mode. I would enjoy that.
Of course, really what Blackout had going for it was that it was a more futuristic take on the, Battle Royale. If they just do it with Modern Warfare, it'll be probably just a graphically better version of PUBG, which, I mean, the graphics in PUBG are great, so maybe that'll just be enough of a selling point.
I mean, it'd be worth a shot. Anyways, man, you go ahead and take away the next little bit of news.
So after over a month of complete silence, BioWare has finally spoken to the Anthem community about the game again. And it's bad. I mean, it's not bad, but it is not nearly what it needed to be considered good. So BioWare has announced a new update coming, I believe, this Tuesday. I could be wrong about that. That will have a variety of bug fixes and quality of life updates and add a few more of the legendary missions. You know, no changes to the actual core systems of the game that are what are destroying it. You know, the loot system, the end game. None of that's getting fixed, but we're getting a few harder missions, I guess. So you can run those over and over again with the 5 players still playing this game. They also talked about the delayed Cataclysm endgame event, which was supposed to launch in May, as, the endgame coming to the game 3 months after launch, and then it got delayed. It's now supposed to be coming out in mid-July. I will remind you that this game came out in February. 5 months after the game came out, we're finally getting endgame content for it. And the endgame content is bad. It's bad. Essentially, the Cataclysm, which was promised to alter the world map of the game, is actually taking place in its own sectioned off map, not part of the main, world. And it is essentially, you fly around the map, you kill some things, you earn points, you complete some objectives, you earn points, and then once the timer runs out, you need to go kill a boss to double your score. And that'll earn you some Cataclysm coins, or whatever they're going to be, which you can use to buy in-game loot boxes for more gear.
I mean, as a game mode, that doesn't really sound too bad, though. I mean,
it's not too bad. The problem is, it's a limited time game mode. It's only going to last 8 weeks. And it will have more powerful gear than the normal game will. They said currently the gear is 5 power levels higher than the base game. So essentially what they've done is, in a game starved for content, after they had a huge controversy where they added content in the Elysian chest where you could get cosmetics at the end of the little raids, dungeon type areas, they removed those. They said from the beginning they were going to remove them, but in the game starved for content, it wasn't a great move. So now they've announced, hey, we're finally adding more content to the game, and we're going to take it away again later, because that's what our game needs. And the fact that the end game content is just basically an arcade timed shoot 'em up. Earn some points to earn Anthem bucks, to earn loot boxes. This isn't end game content. This is an arcade mode. This is what they could come up with. Also, the Cataclysm is supposed to take place inside of a storm, and if you remember that E3 demo, it was amazing. Of course, we now know the E3 demo was completely fake. They didn't even have a working build of the game at that point. But the E3 demo, you were running into the storm that was tearing apart the landscape. Animals were flying away, lightning was striking, breaking apart the land, and you flew into this hurricane. What you do now is you spawn into a bubble, and you fly out of the bubble, and the storm, there's some wind, there's some rain, and everything gets a blue tint. Yeah. Honestly, this was the point where if they finally brought out something, they could have potentially saved Anthem. If they brought out something the community reacted positively to, they could have at least kept what little player base they had and tried to work from there. With this, this isn't going to bring anyone back. This isn't going to get new players. This isn't going to keep the players still here. I may turn on the game to at least try it out. Maybe it'll completely wow me and get me back into the game, but I doubt it. And I just... Even with bad games, like No Man's Sky, which at launch was really bad and bare bones, I always had a little bit of faith that the game could be saved. I always believed that even if they did lie or they did mislead some customers, I did believe Hello Games genuinely wanted to make the best game they could, and they just overpromised. And eventually, they have delivered a great game in No Man's Sky now. It's really good now. I don't believe BioWare can do that, because most of the staff has already moved on to the next game. They were already moving on to Dragon Age 4. Their Anthem is no longer their top priority. They've shunted it off to BioWare Austin, who is already trying to keep the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic MMO alive, which has been sort of hemorrhaging players lately, and it's probably on death's door at this point. And it's just Anthem. I don't see Anthem even still existing by its 1-year anniversary. Maybe the servers will still be on, but I don't think we'll get to see content updates. I don't think we'll even see bug fixes. I think this game is just going to disappear, because BioWare just doesn't seem willing to put in the effort it needs to fix it. And that's just sad to me.
So, I want to ask you something, because we've been having to cover a lot of damage control lately with Anthem. A lot of bad stuff going on. What do you think about the game compared to another disaster that happened, Fallout 76?
Anthem makes Fallout 76 look positively perfect. I mean, Fallout 76 was bad, and it has apparently gotten good. It's still not great, but at least they've gotten it to a somewhat stable state. They're adding new content instead of trying to fix the old stuff. But at least Bethesda admitted that they had problems, and they were releasing patches like crazy to try and fix them. They often broke a lot of things while doing that, but that sort of happens when you're trying to fix things really quickly. Anthem, the BioWare, has not shown this same zeal for their game. They're not trying to, they're not trying to get patches out as quickly as can. They're not altering systems to try to make them better for players. They're fixing bugs. They're releasing a patch every month and a half at this point. And they're just... BioWare, unlike Bethesda, understood the problems with 76. And while they shouldn't be forgiven for releasing 76 in that state, they are at least trying to make it better. They understand the problems inherent in 76 and are trying to fix them. BioWare doesn't understand what's wrong with Anthem. They don't understand why people aren't, flocking to Anthem. They think just because it's a BioWare game, people should be loving it, because that's all BioWare's ever really gotten in the past is intense praise. Even with their worst games, people still loved them.
Even with Andromeda, they still got decent
Yeah, Andromeda, Dragon Age 2, even the ending to Mass Effect 3 was, the ending was bad, and then it's still pretty bad. But at least the core game was good. Mm-hmm. But I honestly don't think BioWare can fully comprehend with their current management that they've screwed up. They don't understand that this game is bad, that they are losing players. They think that if they just fix some bugs here and there, people will eventually come to love the game. They don't understand that the core game is flawed. That the very core of this game is broken. Mm. So anyway, that's my thoughts on the Anthem update.
Okay, well, it was really something, man. It's always nice to hear your input on, Anthem, Destiny, and various games like that, because I don't think a lot of people will get to cover it well enough,
Yeah, I think it's mostly YouTubers that focus on them, and Anthem really doesn't have those anymore, because there's nothing to cover.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Anyways, on to our next little announcement. Now, Xbox has announced plans to bring a version of their Game Pass, the Netflix-style service where you can play from a selection of games for a monthly fee, to the PC market. Microsoft did phrase it as bringing a version of Game Pass to PC, so it's possible the Xbox and PC versions will have different libraries or pricing.
Yeah, the phrasing of it made it sound like they're not going to be, you buy Game Pass for the Xbox and you can just play all these games on PC. Because there are certain things like Outer Wilds. You can play it on Game Pass on Xbox, but it's currently an Epic exclusive, so they probably can't, say, hey, get Game Pass, you can play Outer Wilds on PC. So I'm guessing probably like Microsoft first-party games will be crossed because, you know, all Microsoft first parties go to Game Pass at launch now, which I like. I like Game Pass. It's a really good service. I think it's sort of helped save the Xbox this generation.
It sounds like a pretty good service. I'd definitely sign up for a membership like that. But, I mean, I can believe it being separate for PC and having its own version for Xbox, given that it's Microsoft. You know, Microsoft does have a tendency to want to try and profit off of not only the Xbox market, but also just the PC market in general.
Yeah.
You know, so to have separate lists would make sense, and it would entice more people to want to try out both markets.
Yeah, we've talked in the past about how Microsoft is sort of abandoning the entire console war mentality and trying to sort of bring everything together through its software. Like, you know, the Xbox Live service. It's, you know, Xbox Live services are coming to Switch. They're coming to Android. They've got, you know, I think they've realized that they can't really win the console war against Sony at this point. So they're just trying to, I don't know, worm their way into every other facet of gaming, which, sure.
I mean, it works,
Yeah.
you know. Anyways, go ahead and take it along to the next topic.
Nintendo has announced several new Pokemon games. Now, besides the recently revealed Sword and Shield, well, I say recently, I think it was last year,
Yeah.
Sword and Shield, there's also going to be Pokemon Sleep, which is sort of a companion or opposite to Pokemon Go, where the game tracks your sleeping habits and rewards you for getting a good night's sleep. I mean, okay. This is another in a trend, and we were talking about this, of Nintendo really caring about their gamers' health. Like, they're really trying to get us to be healthier. And I'm wondering if this is a sort of form of guilt because they helped, you know, they helped launch the gaming market again after the crash. So maybe they realized that, you know, gaming has promoted some unhealthy habits. Maybe we should try to fix this.
But, you know, then again, this is Nintendo we're talking about. This is the people who made games like WarioWare. There's literally a Pokemon game where you just train a Magikarp to jump as high as possible and get the high score. So
Oh, I'm not saying they're not still a ridiculous company that makes odd, magical games. But it's just, Anyway, Pokemon Sleep, I think they announced some cross-compatibility with Pokemon Go. I'm not 100% sure. However, what will have cross-compatibility with Pokemon Go is Pokemon Home, which is now sort of a Pokemon, which is, when it launches, going to be a hub for pretty much every other Pokemon game. It's going to be an online service where you can transfer, according to the chart they released, I'm not sure if this is how it will be at launch, you could transfer a Pokemon from Pokemon Go to Pokemon Home, put that Pokemon in Pokemon Sword and Shield, level it up, take that Pokemon out, and put it into the upcoming Pokemon Masters, which we'll talk about in a second. Now that, I think, is really interesting, because for a while, Nintendo's had the Pokemon Bank, where you can store Pokemon, and it was really, you could put, like, you know, your Pokemon from Generation 5 in and transfer them into Generation 6. It was, it was supposed to be an easier way to transfer them without, like, link cables, if anyone remembers those.
God, the old Game Boy Color days.
Yeah, the problem is Nintendo is really bad at the internet. Just like every facet of the internet, they're bad at it. So Pokemon Bank wasn't great. And given that the Pokemon Home is supposed to be online and have some sort of social aspect, I'm kind of worried about it because, again, Nintendo, bad at the internet. Bad at the internet, Nintendo. And the last two games are a sequel to Detective Pikachu called Detective Pikachu 2, which, I mean, the original game's still okay, but I'm guessing that a sequel got greenlit mainly because of the movie.
Yeah, the movie seemed to have done really well, so it would have been weird if Nintendo didn't, you know, run off that whole hype train to make a second, you know, installment.
Yeah. No release date for Detective Pikachu 2, but I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to release it to coincide with this Detective Pikachu 2, the movie. Man, I hope they do something about that titling. And finally, Pokemon Masters is the new mobile game from DNA we actually talked about a few weeks ago. We don't know a lot about the game. We've got a few screenshots, but it seems like you can build a team of trainers from the mainline Pokemon games. Like they had some of the Elite Four and some, you know, rivals, I think. And you build a team with them along with their Pokemon, and you battle against other teams of trainers and their Pokemon. Not 100% sure. They didn't really go into detail with it. I'm guessing we're probably going to get more at Nintendo's E3 Direct presentation.
It would be real interesting if that's the case, because even though trainers are very common in Pokemon games, they're not really focused on that much. They focus on the Pokemon. So the fact that there might be a mobile game where the focus is on assembling trainers instead of just assembling the Pokemon themselves would be a little interesting.
And they did put an emphasis in the press release that this would be a more RPG game, which could be interesting, because the last few Pokemon mobile titles, like the Magikarp Jump one and the one where they were like little cube Pokemon that you battled across map.
Quest.
Yes, Pokemon Quest. Those couldn't really hold my attention. The only one that could really was Pokemon Go, and that's mainly for the novelty of Pokemon in the world.
Well, I mean, Pokemon as an RPG is very possible. One of my favorite Pokemon games that I played as a kid was the Mystery Dungeon series. And that was basically a Pokemon RPG.
That one actually seems like it'd be really easy to port over to a mobile format. They should make another Mystery Dungeon game.
They really should. But, I mean, it sounds interesting enough, I kind of hope to get at least a trailer out soon, showing what Pokemon Masters is all about,
Yeah. Again, E3 is, in the next few weeks, so we'll probably get more information there.
Yeah. Now, on to our last little bit of news before we hop into our trailer talk. Now, this is one I'm actually making a YouTube video on, because I find the whole thing, interesting. I don't want to say weird, because it's not really weird, but it's just interesting. It has been recently confirmed that Robert Pattinson is now officially cast as the new Batman in the upcoming movie that's being directed by Matt Reeves. Mm-hmm. It's also rumored that the film may now be the first in a trilogy. Now, this is after a lot of speculation on who the next Batman would be. This is after Ben Affleck stepped down as the star in the movie, after stepping down as the writer of the movie, after stepping down as the director of the movie. And for a while, people were wondering who was going to be the next Batman. We got a little bit of news from Warner Brothers that they were looking for a younger version of Batman, but for the most part, that was all that we had really gotten. Until we found out that it was Robert Pattinson against an X-Men star. What was his name again?
Nicholas Hoult. He plays Beast in the new not prequel, but young the First Class timeline.
Yeah,
let's call it that.
Okay.
Where now he's supposed to be like 60, but still looks like he's 30.
Interesting.
Because they keep doing this 10-year time jump thing, and they don't actually try to make it look like anybody's aged.
Yeah, that's true. But apparently, like a few days ago, they had like auditions between the two, because Robert Pattinson and that one fellow were like the two most likely candidates. And then it was rumored for a while that Robert Pattinson has been chosen, and then recently Variety confirmed that Robert Pattinson was Batman. I still like to say it's a possibility, because we haven't gotten a press release thing yet from Warner Brothers, and they haven't really given us directly their opinion on the whole matter, so I don't really want to jump to conclusions just yet, even though it seems like it's basically confirmed by everybody.
Yeah, until Warner Brothers or Robert Pattinson directly comments on it, I'm still a little hesitant. But given that we got the rumors and now we're getting a bunch of these, sources saying he is Batman now, I'm willing to say I think he's going to be Batman. I think I'm going to go forward assuming he's Batman, unless directly, contradicted by an actual major party.
Yeah, I want to say that he is Batman too. It's basically confirmed, but, I still have to be a little cautious. I'm a little worried, though, about the fact that this might possibly be a trilogy, because when it comes to Batman, even during Ben Affleck's run, it's still trying to recover from the Christopher Nolan trilogy. Because while the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy was amazing, it was a really good superhero trilogy, good film trilogy just in general, it seemed that for a very long time after that trilogy, every single superhero film was trying desperately to copy Christopher Nolan's vibes when it came to making superhero movies, and that caused everything to get super dark and edgy. You had Man of Steel, you had Batman versus Superman. Mm-hmm. Wonder Woman, luckily, was able to not be as dark, but that was from a different director. Patty Jenkins did a great job on Wonder Woman.
Justice League was half and half, mainly because it had two directors, Zack Snyder and Joss Whedon. Yeah. So it was partially this dark, gritty thing and partially a bad Joss Whedon movie.
And, for a while, it kind of felt like Marvel was starting to tilt into the dark, edgy direction until Guardians of the Galaxy basically slapped it across the face and it went back to being, superhero films and everything.
Yeah, and, Marvel still had some dark movies. The Captain America movies always maintained a fairly, grounded, somewhat gritty atmosphere, but they were never as bad as DC.
Yeah, and I'm afraid of the fact that Matt Reeves is working on a trilogy, because I really hope that he does put his own spin on it, as opposed to just trying to do what Christopher Nolan did. Because if we get our superhero movies knocked back into the whole dark, gritty, super dark, lots of rain kind of thing, I'll be very disappointed.
I don't want an origin movie. We know Batman's origin. We just do at this point. I mean,
we need a year one story.
Yeah, I'd be fine with any type of like early Batman story as long as it's not his first outing as Batman. I don't want to see him get the suit. I don't want to see Thomas and Martha Wayne die again. I don't want to see him train to be Batman. I want him to at least be, have some time as Batman under his belt, even if he's not out of his first year yet. I want him to have, sort of established himself as Batman and work from there. He can still be inexperienced. He can still be, a new Batman, and the only cop on his side is Jim Gordon. Maybe not even Gordon's on his side yet. But I don't want to see his origin again. We know his origin.
Yeah, and, I think it would be fine if we just had a movie where we don't have to see his origin story. The first Batman movie didn't really ponder too much on the origin story. We did see it, but it was very quick.
Yeah, it was mainly to set up the fact that the Joker was part of it, because they sort of assumed we all knew Batman's origin, because even back then, everyone knew Batman's origin.
Yeah.
It's Batman.
People who went to watch the movie had seen the comics. That's why they were there.
Yeah.
And then with Ben Affleck's version of Batman, while some people have their criticisms on it, at least it was like the first time in a while we had a Batman that was already established. We didn't have to see his origin story. We jumped right into Batman already having his car, having his suit, having his own Bat cave with Alfred and everything. And that was refreshing because, while we did get the origin story again, at least it jumped more into just him already being Batman.
Yeah, and really the only reason the origin story was there was so we could learn and internalize his mother's name.
Martha!
So we could have Martha, which...
You're letting them hurt Martha!
Anyway, Robert Pattinson, Batman now. New films may possibly be a trilogy, which I like Matt Reeves. I like his directing, so hopefully it'll be... And they haven't really... The rumor is that it'll be a trilogy, but it doesn't really go any deeper if it'll be like a Matt Reeves-led trilogy, or if they're going to be directed by different people and it's just Warner Brothers wants a trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Be interesting to see.
It'd definitely be interesting to see. I'm still a bit skeptical on Robert Pattinson being Batman, though, just because of the fact that he could pull off a Bruce Wayne. He does look like he'd pull off a decent Bruce Wayne. He's got the looks and he's got the charisma. And he's also, a good chunk of the Twilight Saga was broody, dark dialogues, which is Bruce Wayne's whole thing. But as far as Batman goes, we haven't really seen Robert Pattinson in that many action movies. His most popular work is usually romances. I mean, there was some extent of an action scene in the Twilight Saga, but most of that was like wires and stuff like that,
Yeah, after Twilight, he sort of went into the more indie sphere of movies, which apparently he performed great in those, which was always fun. I really hope that it turns out Robert Pattinson is playing Terry McGinnis and we get a Batman Beyond movie. It's unlikely.
Someday.
Someday.
Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that about does it for our weekly recap. And now it is time for us to enter our next segment, Trailer Talk. Now, in Trailer Talk, Brian and I like to talk about some of the latest trailers to have dropped within the week and give our general opinion on what we think about them. Now, the first trailer we're going to talk about is actually the second trailer that we had gotten. I thought the last one was a teaser, but it actually was the first. And it's talking about the first movie we talked about on this show, ironically, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Its U.S. release date is July 26, 2019. It's starring Luke Perry, Margot Robbie, Leonardo DiCaprio, Brad Pitt, so many other A-list celebrities. And the synopsis is that a faded TV actor and his stunt double strive to achieve fame and success in the film industry during the final years of Hollywood's golden age in 1969 Los Angeles. And this is directed by Quentin Tarantino. They had to emphasize that it was the 9th film. And why don't you explain a little bit about the running gag behind that one?
Okay, so for a long time, Quentin Tarantino said he was only ever going to make 8 films. He was going to make 8 films and then he'd be done directing. And then he decided he wanted to direct some more. Because, right now, he's got Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He's got that Star Trek movie in development. He's still teasing Kill Bill 3.
What?
Though I don't think it's going to get made because Uma Thurman won't work with him because he almost killed her on the set of Kill Bill.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, so, but still, he is, essentially he kept saying, oh, I'm going to make 8 films, and it was going to be his, auteur thing where he only ever made 8 films, and those were going to be, the collection of his genius. And then he just kept having ideas for more films, and, that's fine. I mean, you're not really the best guy, but you're a damn good filmmaker. If you want to make more films, make more films. Just stop making such a big deal about it and no one will talk about it.
Yeah.
I didn't know this was his 9th film. I kind of lost count until, all the marketing said his 9th film.
Man. Trailer-wise, though, the movie does look very good. Mm-hmm. I have to admit, I always have a soft spot for, early to late 60s films, only because it's just the overall vibes people put into those kind of movies are different. Because with modern day films, it always seems they focus more on the super serious side, while with films in the 60s, they always seem to exaggerate everything.
Yeah.
And, we got to get a little bit more character dynamic between Leonardo DiCaprio's character Rick Dalton and Brad Pitt's character as Rick Dalton's stunt double, which was good to see. And we also finally got to see Margot Robbie perform a little bit as Sharon Tate in this movie. Now, I like to point out that I think this movie seems a little weird, as in, it's a movie that's not based on real events. It says it all online. The story of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is not real, but events that are in it are real. This actually shows, Charles Manson and his little following, and we're introduced to Sharon Tate. And I think it's a little weird that they're doing that.
Yeah, you don't get a lot of those types of movies so modern. This was 50 years ago. Those types of movies are typically for, historical epics, or, telling the story of, the kings of England, and also here's this guy that never actually existed but was super involved in the plot of the movie and saved England and this and that. Mm-hmm. And it's typically reserved for, 500 years ago, where no one's alive to remember, hey, that didn't happen. I mean, there are people still alive that probably remember the Manson murders.
Oh, yeah. I'm pretty sure of that. I'm pretty sure some of his followers are still around to this day, I think.
Yeah, some of his followers are still alive. Luckily, Manson's not, thank God.
Yeah, thank God. But, the movie looks interesting. It's a Tarantino film. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it's probably going to be pretty long, fairly between the 2-hour, 3-hour ratio, given his previous works.
It's going to be Luke Perry's final role that he filmed before his untimely death earlier this year.
Yeah, so it's a very special one, But I'm looking forward to it because Tarantino films have a very good amount of dialogue, in my opinion. Anyways, on to the next trailer. The first trailer that we had gotten for Terminator Dark Fate. Its U.S. release date is November 1st, 2019, starring Mackenzie Davis, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Linda Hamilton, and many others. The synopsis is that Sarah Connor joins forces with a female cyborg to protect a young girl from a powerful new Terminator, and it's directed by Tim Miller.
Mm-hmm. Guy that directed Deadpool.
Now...
Also executive producing Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh, God. Is he?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. What? No way. No. That's not true. No. That can't be right.
It's very right. I'm sorry, Ed. I'm sorry. I had to
no,
break
that's
this
not
news to
true.
you live on air.
Does not exist. That does not exist. I will not believe that.
Okay, that'll be your Dora movie.
That'll be my Dora movie because it is not real. As far as this trailer goes, though, the action is pretty good. I will admit that. It's your run-of-the-mill Terminator movie. A robot gets hit by a bazooka, One of them's driving a diesel truck, and it's basically the same liquid robot dude from the second Terminator movie.
Yeah, they've sort of combined the two in that the first Terminator had, the solid metal endoskeleton. The second movie had the liquid metal Terminator. And now this one has a Terminator that can split between its solid endoskeleton and a liquid metal, so there can be 2 Terminators at once, which is a really cool concept, I think.
Oh, yeah. It definitely looks interesting. Sarah Connor looks awesome in the trailer that we'd gotten. It's a little weird, though, that Arnold Schwarzenegger's robot is in there. I didn't notice it at first, because I thought it was a Terminator movie, but then you brought me up to speed, Brian, that this one kind of skewers the continuity, because that just seems to be very popular in film franchises right now. Okay,
so essentially what happened was James Cameron was the head of Terminator 1 and 2, and Terminator 2 was supposed to be the last movie, because it ended with the Terminator being destroyed and Skynet's creation being averted. Judgment Day is averted. And then Terminator 3 came out, which said, yeah, no, Skynet is inevitable, the world ends, and the machines rise. Then we get Terminator Salvation, which is Not technically a sequel to 3, but it may take place in the same timeline where it's, in the future where Skynet is taken over. Then we get Genesis, where I'm not even going to try to describe that plot. There's a lot of time travel nonsense in it. But Judgment Day is still apparently inevitable, only this time it's brought on by Facebook, kind of, which is probably the most realistic thing in that movie. But now Dark Fate is ignoring every movie past Terminator 2. Every movie past Terminator 2 is no longer, or is at least not canon to Dark Fate. We'll see how Dark Fate does and see if this remains canon. But essentially, so last we saw is Skynet was defeated. However, now James Cameron is saying that essentially because humanity keeps advancing and keeps getting, we're creating AIs now that can, that are taught by Reddit to be Nazis. So we keep getting closer and closer to Judgment Day. And what Sarah Connor has been doing for the last 30 years is she's found a way to track where a Terminator is going to appear in the present day. And she's essentially been hunting Terminators and preventing the rise of Skynet, a few years at a time. So now Sarah Connor has come out of the woodwork to protect this girl, Danny, who is the target of a Terminator. However, it appears that the Resistance has also sent back some sort of new hybrid Terminator to protect her. We get a lot of references to how this new woman looks human, and she keeps referring to herself as human. She has more human mannerisms than any Terminator has had. But she's obviously got some sort of mechanical, skin or something. Seems like she may be play on the hybrid Terminator that they introduced in Salvation.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. We also get Arnold Schwarzenegger back as another T-800, but it has been confirmed that this is a different robot from the first movie or the second movie, and will have a very different role in this movie. And while we don't see it in the trailer, we know John Connor will appear in some form in the movie. We don't know if he's still alive yet. We don't know if something's happened to him, if he still needs to be the leader of the Resistance. There's just so much of what we sort of assume to be the Terminator canon, like Skynet eventually rising and John Connor becoming the head of the Resistance, that has just sort of been thrown out the window because that's how it was supposed to be at the end of T2, that we don't really know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely looks like an interesting movie. I will admit. It's still a little vague on the details, though, so I can't wait for the second trailer to drop, because second trailers always give more detail on the plot and everything. Anyways, on to the next little trailer. Now, this is one for the upcoming CBS show Picard. The first trailer's release date is sometime in 2019. Star Trek Picard is an upcoming American web television series created by CBS All Access by executive producer Alex Kurtzman. It will be the 8th series in the Star Trek franchise and centers on the character Jean-Luc Picard.
That's nothing to go on there.
Yeah, I'm not really well versed in the Star Trek fandom, so I'll pass it along to you to give a bit of explanation as to what's going on.
Okay, so to confirm, because I showed the trailer to my mother and this surprised her, this will be starring Patrick Stewart as an older Jean-Luc Picard. It will take place after The Next Generation, after Deep Space Nine. It'll be as far as we can tell, it's canon to all the TV shows that came before it. They have confirmed that they're going to be ignoring some of the books and other media that. But the movies and the TV shows are canon to this. And it looks like it's going to be exploring an older Picard who is apparently an admiral now, or a retired admiral, which means he was no longer leading a ship by the end of his career, because admirals don't typically captain ships in Starfleet. And now he's retired to his family's vineyard in France, which was run by his brother and his brother's son until they died at, I believe it was one of the movies. I don't remember which one. But he is now the last of the Picard line. He has no children, as far as we know, unless something's happened in between the end of Next Generation and this. It's also mentioned he led the largest rescue fleet in Starfleet history before something happened that made him lose faith in Starfleet. And it's not clear what the rescue fleet was going towards. One major theory is it's going to be going towards the destruction of Romulus and Remus, which, if you've watched the new, Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto Star Trek movies, is the inciting incident that the destruction of Romulus and Remus and Spock's attempts to save it created a time warp that brought, Spock from the original timeline back in time and created this alternate timeline.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, there's a lot going on here. There's also the Dominion War from Deep Space Nine that happened that turned Starfleet into a much more militaristic and morally gray, if not black, organization to fight the Dominion, which were these intergalactic shapeshifters. Which it's kind of crazy how much happened after Next Generation that they can explore and show how this may have damaged Picard. Because if there's one word I would use to describe the way Picard looks, is we only get one scene of Patrick Stewart playing Picard, and he doesn't say anything. It's just a close-up of his face, but he looks so broken. And this is I've been talking about, this is, Patrick Stewart, this is what he does now. He just goes back to his old characters and plays them as sad old men. We got it with Professor X and Logan. We're getting it with Jean-Luc Picard and Picard.
I mean, it works. He could pull off any role now, it seems. People just enjoy him in anything just because he's Patrick Stewart.
I mean, yeah. Patrick Stewart is he's Patrick Stewart. How do you say...
You can't say no to him.
Yeah, he's one of the best actors of our time.
Anyways, our next trailer to talk about is the first trailer for Rambo: Last Blood. The U.S. release date is September 20th, 2019, and it is starring Sylvester Stallone, Paz Vega, Luis Mandylor, and others. The synopsis is that Rambo goes up against a Mexican cartel in what's reported to be his last adventure, and it's directed by Adrian Grunberg. Now, there's not really too much for us to go on. All we know is that Rambo, I guess after the last movie, he was basically retired. He's living out on this little house in this remote area. It looks like a desert or whatever. And I guess a cartel did something to him that made him decide to come out of retirement. And he's basically taking all these people on. And he's got all these traps rigged throughout his house, throughout the property. And he's basically hunting them all down in classic Rambo fashion. While it does look very fun, I always enjoy a good movie that shows off traps being set in intricate ways of taking on numerous soldiers and stuff like that. I do gotta admit it's a little weird that they decided to make a Rambo movie now of all times.
Yeah, especially after Sylvester Stallone's other big franchise in Rocky sort of pushed him back into a mentor role for the Creed movies. It's now they've acknowledged he's way too old to be doing this, so they've moved on to, a new star, and he's the mentor to him. And it seems odd that now they're taking Rambo, which is, I mean, Sylvester Stallone was incredibly popular as John Rambo, but he seems just too old to be doing this.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what people said when he was cast to star in The Expendables, though. Some people were saying, he's getting a little old to still be doing the action role and everything, So I think The Expendables might have had something to do with him wanting to jump back into the whole Rambo role.
Of course, Expendables were sort of part parody of the fact that these are all, the old action stars getting together to do this movie. You've got, Bruce Willis, Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Jason Statham.
Jason Statham is still...
fairly new, that's true.
I mean, he's not as old as the other ones, but it was... The Expendables was very much, hey, you remember all the action stars from the 70s and 80s? They're all in one movie now, in, 2010.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. But still, though, I mean, it looked interesting. I mean, to some extent, the new Rambo movie, so I think you'd be interested in it. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, we have a trailer to talk about, but this is going to be a discussion piece. So we're wrapping up trailer talk right now. And we're actually jumping into our discussion piece, where we will be talking about the latest trailer for Death Stranding, the most confusing video game work I have ever witnessed in my life. And I have played, classic Japanese arcade games. And this plot is more confusing than any of those games I had ever played.
Okay, so for some backstory, Death Stranding, if you don't know, is the next game from Metal Gear creator Hideo Kojima. And if you've ever played a Metal Gear game, you kind of know the amount of nonsense we're going in for.
Oh my
God.
God.
This is the most Hideo Kojima game I have ever seen. All of Metal Gear, all the weird subplots, the political commentary, the just off-the-wall ridiculous scenes, the unfortunate treatment of women.
All the really weird spiritual, supernatural stuff from the Silent Hill games that also didn't really make any sense. We were supposed to just be like, okay, this is happening.
that has all been training for Death Stranding. That was Hideo Kojima running up the stairs in Philly. That was his beating up a row. I don't know why I keep going back. I think it's because we were talking about Rocky. Anyway, so the most basic plot synopsis we can come up with is essentially this is in a future United States and possibly Earth that has been ravaged by
demons.
Equal parts demon invasion and time storm, as there are storms that rove across the land, and anything the rain touches either accelerates in time, like it ages super fast, or it can go backwards in time, like we see the rain hitting the ground and a giant plant sprouts up in seconds, or it hit a crow out of the sky and the crow rapidly ages and dies and turns gray. So yeah, and we've got Norman Reedus' character, who we know is named Sam, who seems to be sort of a futuristic mailman, taking packages across the ravaged United States, delivering them between something called bridges, which may be the remnants of the U.S. government, maybe some new faction, we don't know.
Yeah, it was mentioned that Sam is supposed to somehow has been asked to try and bring America back together somehow, but we don't even know exactly what separated it and how he could possibly even bring it back.
Yeah, it's possible this event, the time storms, the demon invasion, is the Death Stranding, as it is sort of referred to as an event later on. It's not just, the storms are caused by BTs, which are the demons, and then there's things called void outs, where it looks like if a human merges with a BT, it causes this giant crater explosion. So the trailer starts with Sam with Mads Mikkelsen's character, who we now know is named Cliff, singing to what seems to be a baby in one of the containers we've seen.
Yeah,
it looks
baby.
like it's there's this sort of orange tint to it. We're seeing from the baby's perspective, so it looks like it's in a container. So that happened. Then Sam speaks to the President of the United States, who looks like she's on her deathbed, like she's dying in the Oval Office, and Sam may be her son. We see pictures of him with a healthier version of her. And it seems like there's a mother-son dynamic there. And there's this entire thing about how he can bring the U.S. back together, but Sam thinks the U.S. is fractured beyond repair, which seems like it's commentary on current U.S. politics. We try to stray away from politics, but with a Hideo Kojima game, it is just so
It is so inevitable to avoid politics in a Hideo Kojima work.
It is just... It's integral to the experience.
Yeah.
So we then get a scene of Sam outrunning the storm on a future motorcycle, which makes it the second PlayStation first-party game to have a motorcycle as seemingly a main part of the gameplay. Because Days Gone.
Yeah.
So we see the storm, it ages the crow. We then see that Sam has this weird floating dog tags that reappear throughout the trailer at points. We don't really get an explanation behind them, but they're floating dog tags, and that feels like it'll be important at some point.
Yeah, it's not the weirdest thing that he has, though, because he's also carrying with him this really weird-looking backpack.
Yeah, we finally get a look at some actual gameplay of the game, and the gameplay seems to mainly consist of you as Sam sort of traversing across a post-apocalyptic America, and there's a lot of scenes of you just traveling alone and trying to traverse across, there's a ladder you can take out, an extendable ladder you can use to either... You can prop it up against a rock and climb up it. You can lay it across a ravine and use it as a bridge. There's a climbing rope you can stick in and, rappel down a ravine.
Yeah, and the backpack seems to act like a dispenser for this stuff. You seem to make, a request through, in-game user interface, and it'll just pop up the item. Another thing that the backpack has is this weird little, device up on the corner. It's like a snapping little... thing. It looks like one of Dr. Octopus's tentacles at the very tips.
Yeah, we've seen these in a few trailers before, and they seem to be used to sense the BTs, the demons, when they're nearby. Mm-hmm. And they're we've seen several different modes that we've been able to suss out. They start being active when there's a BT nearby. When a BT gets close, it starts, doing this weird clappy thing. And when a BT is I think it's when a BT has sensed the person with the backpack, it does this weird crosshair thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, Okay, one thing that I do want to talk about though is the combat mechanics that seem to be there in Death Stranding. We do get to see 2 combat scenes, one where Norman Reedus' character is running away from 2 fellows with melee weapons, and another one where he seems to be in a trench in like World War I, World War II with a machine gun. What I want to point out though is that we were talking about this before we did the show, I really enjoyed how realistic the combat seems to be in Death Stranding. While in most games, when you're fighting enemies and you run away, you always happen to run fairly fast, just enough to stay out of their reach. While in Death Stranding, it looks like every single second, you feel like you're about to get whacked upside the head if you don't happen to step aside in the right direction.
Yeah, the enemies, what we saw were a group of people in yellow mechanical hazmat suits with electric spears. And they start chasing down Sam, and they start throwing their spears, which create these sort of area of effect electrical zones, which I'm guessing probably stun you if you walk into them. We didn't get to see. But they're also as fast, if not faster, than Sam. Like, one of them comes around to flank him back towards the other, so Sam has to dodge out of the way. He does take a hit. And we do get to see some unarmed melee combat after this, but it does feel like stealth and running away are supposed to be, like, the first two options. That the actual combat is probably a last resort if you can't escape. So I'm guessing it's going to be, you're not going to be an overpowered god. You're not going to be able to take out guys with 1 or 2 hits and move on. You're probably going to be always on the back foot.
Yeah, I thought it was a nice touch though that when you're sneaking away from the guards during the trailer, when they do notice you, there's like a red light that pops up above all their heads, kind of reminding me of the old Metal Gear times when they get notified and there's the big old red exclamation mark.
Yeah, I'm guessing, because the red light was actually made by the tentacle things we were talking about earlier, I'm guessing those are going to act as sort of this game's version of the Metal Gear exclamation point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, let's talk about the BTs for a second.
Yeah, the BTs are... Okay, we don't really know what the BTs are. They seem to be ghostly apparitions from what's referred to as the other side. So possibly actually ghosts, or maybe that's just a euphemism for another dimension. They appear in the real world as these smoky, ghostly humanoid figures connected by these umbilical cords. And I call them umbilical cords because there's a lot of baby imagery in this game. And they all seem to be connected by this. And they are hostile towards most humans, it seems. Like, when they spot Sam, you can try to sneak past them, but when they spot Sam, they come after him with these weird glowing handprints on the ground that turn into this area of ooze that absorbs him. And it does look like Sam is about to escape it, so maybe in the game, if you act fast enough, you can escape the zone. But Sam is absorbed by the goo and seemingly taken into another world. Mm-hmm. And we saw something like this in an earlier trailer where Sam is taken into another world where he's floating naked in this seemingly endless underwater expanse with other people around him. And when he reappears in the real world, where he was is now just this massive crater. So it's possible that whenever you get caught by these things, it causes a giant crater to form where you once were, and that affects the game world.
It's also cool to note that these creatures, the BTs, they're not visible at first. At first, your little device will get a sense that they are there, but you won't see anything. Your sensor has to detect them, and then they do something that creates like a kind of like a scanning wave that suddenly allows you to see them floating around.
Yeah, and we know that we've seen from previous trailers that the little clappy things seem to be powered by what are called bridge babies, which are the babies that are stuck inside these sort of artificial wombs that we've seen throughout all the trailers, that you plug into them and it activates them, and they are helpful in sensing the BTs. They like Sam says he can't see BTs, but he can sense them, like that's some sort of weird ability he has. But for the rest of humanity, maybe they need to use these bridge babies and these devices to see BTs, to know where they are. We haven't even really gotten into the World War I part of this, have we? I mean, we haven't even gotten into the many factions, the gold-faced guy, the use. Okay, so let's...
Yeah, we're already over time, so... Gosh.
Okay, I'm going to try to run through this as best as I can, because... Okay, There's a place called Edge Knot City, which is allegedly under threat by a faction called the UCA. The UCA is run by a group called the Homo Demons, a separatist group that can summon the Time Rain and the BTs. Troy Baker's golden-masked man from earlier trailers, who's now known as Riggs, is apparently either the leader or at least a member of these. At one point, they capture Lea Sedou's Fragile, which... Let's not even get in... We don't have enough time to get into the implications of one of the main female characters being named Fragile, while another one is named Mama. Okay, so yellow hazmat suits. Motorcycle is used for traversal in some areas. Demons are called BTs, bridge babies. Okay, so after he gets absorbed into the goo, Sam is in this World War I section. We don't know if those two things are directly related or if it's just editing. But essentially where Sam is in the World War II trench where like tanks and soldiers start appearing as they look like BTs without umbilical cords. They appear out of smoke and then disappear. And this is also the only instance where we see actual gunplay in the trailer. We see Sam shooting up a World War I soldier. I think I kept saying two. I meant World War I. And it's interesting to note that the gun is obviously not of the time period. You see it has this yellow metal on top. It shoots these weird energy projectiles. It's very obviously from Sam's time period. And that, along with the weird appearance of all the soldiers, makes me think that this is not actually time travel, but maybe some sort of weird otherworldly plane. This is also where we finally see Cliff again appear naked out of a pool of the ooze, connected to 4 undead soldiers by umbilical cords, like we saw in an earlier trailer. Now, we also see him do this again later in the trailer, and there's not a ton notable about that, but what is notable is that while we see him naked, we see that he has a cesarean section scar on his stomach, which is exactly what we also saw on Sam in the very first trailer for Death Stranding, where he appeared naked. And it's interesting, as these are the only 2 characters we've seen with them, mainly because they're the only 2 characters we've seen naked. But it is possible that maybe there's probably some connection between Cliff and Sam. So anyway, that's the World War I section. Only instance of the gun. We got some characters introduced. We got Sam, Cliff, Fragile, Mama, and then a few others. But my favorite character is Die Hard Man. Yes, we've got Guillermo del Toro's Dead Man, we've got Hard Man, and now there's Die Hard Man, who is a man that wears a black skull mask. And I just want to know, what is Die Hard Man? That is his name.
That's like a 4th grade superhero.
That's what your grandmother calls the Bruce Willis's character in Die Hard. He's Die Hard Man.
It's Die Hard.
Anyway, the Death Stranding is an event. It is apparently caused by an inability to connect with the other side, and Riggs says he actually has the ability to form connections with the other side. And a lot of the the cards that appear in between scenes stress connection and either an inability to connect or an inability to break connections as both being seemingly negative things in this world. We also see Cliff emerge from another puddle, this time in full combat gear, and he lights a cigarette out of thin air. Now, some people have interpreted this as there being, there's a bunch of ash and cinder in the air, and maybe he lit it on one of those. But I'm thinking maybe he got it lit by someone on the other side. Because he's obviously connected to them, because he literally has the umbilical cords coming out of him.
Yeah, but then again, it was also shown in the trailer that the parademons, or the people who are partner up with the demons, seem to have some bit of an ability. We see the leader of that group hold a woman up against the wall, and he seems to have some flames going around him or something like that. Yeah,
and it's hard to tell. I wouldn't be surprised if Cliff is his own 3rd faction of some sort.
Yeah, well,
we ran through that, which it probably makes about as much sense to you now as it does us with that very brief and rushed explanation, because that's just the nature of this game. It's coming out November 8th, and I think that's the only time we're going to get something close to answers. But it's a Hideo Kojima game. I mean, even with Metal Gear, with how many games, we still don't really know what the hell is going on.
Where do you think this game will sit on the Kojima scale?
I think it is going to, on a Kojima scale of 1 to 10, I think it's going to shoot past 10 and, make the scale even longer.
Oh, goodness. Now that sounds groundbreaking right there.
Yeah.
Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that about does it for today's episode of the Phone Booth here on the Voice of San Joaquin. My name is Ed Heitman, and joining me in the studio, as always, is my good friend and co-host Brian Rodriguez.
Goodbye.
Be sure to tune in to the Voice of San Joaquin every Saturday from 1 to 2, where we talk about all things pop culture related. Anything from movies to video games to TV shows to comic books, you name it, we do our very best to cover it. Do you have a topic you want us to talk about, a trailer to discuss? Let us know in the comments, and we'll be sure to talk about it on our next episode. Be sure to tune in next week, though, for our first anniversary special.
1 year.
We're real excited to do it. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, have yourselves a wonderful, wonderful afternoon.